The Scourge of the Pharaohs alludes to the conviction that anybody who upsets the mummy of an old Egyptian individual, particularly assuming that it was a pharaoh, has a curse. This revile that doesn't separate among criminals and benevolent archeologists has caused misfortune, disease, or death since the mid-20th hundred years. Numerous journalists and narratives have examined that revile brought about by illustrative logical causes, for example, microorganisms or radiation. However, the cutting-edge starting points of Egyptian stories about the Scourge of the Mummy and basically in European societies, the progress from sorcery to science to make sense of condemnations, and on changing their purposes from the issue of the dead to the entertainment of the majority in a blood and gore movie, propose that Egyptian condemnations are principally a peculiarity social, not solely logical. There are periodic examples of genuine old condemnations showing up inside or on the veneer of a burial place, as on account of the mastaba, an old Egyptian interment, of Kentika of the 6th line at Saqqara. They show up, clearly, as an immediate guidance to the ministers to painstakingly safeguard the burial ground and keep up with the custom of virtue, as opposed to caution against conceivable robbers. Although there are accounts of condemnations tracing all the way back to the 19th 100 years, they duplicated following Howard Carter's revelation of Tutankhamun's burial place. In spite of well-known confusions, there was no truly composed revile present in the burial chamber of Pharaoh. The proof for such reviles connected with ruler Tutankhamun has been viewed as so inconsequential that it is seen as a unadulterated commendation trap. By Donald Redford. The legend of the Scourge of the Pharaohs started when the burial chamber of Tutankhamun was opened in 1922, and the main point that grabbed their eye was the engravings making "Passing will hit with the wings of the poisoners every individual who upsets the Lord." This is the expression that was found engraved on the burial chamber of Tutankhamun, which was trailed by a progression of unusual episodes that started with the demise of numerous laborers the old ministers of Egypt have poured their revile on any individual who attempts to move these relics from their place. It was said that a solid dust storm ejected around Tutankhamun's burial place on the day it was opened and a bird of prey was seen flying over the cemetery. It is realized that the hawk is one of the sacrosanct images of the pharaohs. Yet, there is a German researcher who opened the record of this peculiarity that has engrossed numerous to make sense of for us with reason, medication, and science how 40 researchers and scientists kicked the bucket before it was past the point of no return, and the explanation is that the youthful Lord Tutankhamun, albeit this lord has no verifiable worth and may have been a ruler, he didn't do a lot. It was presumably in the period of the counter-unrest that ruler Akhenaten was quick to call for unification. In any case, unquestionably this youthful ruler got his most noteworthy significance from the way that his burial chamber was immaculate by criminals. After 33 centuries, she showed up to us totally safe, and that this lord was likewise the wellspring of the pharaonic curse. All the individuals who contacted him were pursued by death in a steady progression, recording the most astounding and weirdest sorts of discipline known to man. Conspicuously, these 40 are dead. In any case, the puzzling thing is that demise for exceptionally unimportant reasons and in boundless conditions couldn't be made sense of by researchers with an unmistakable logical clarification. Tutankhamun, the proprietor of the burial chamber, stone casket and reviles, controlled Egypt for a very long time from 1358 to 1349 BC. His grave was found by Howard Carter, and long stretches of torture, sweat, and despondency started. On November 6, 1922, Howard went to Master Carnarvon to tell him, "I at last found something great in the Valley of the Rulers, and I shut the top on the entryways and the storm cellar with the gold that you personally could come to see." The ruler came to Luxor on November 23, joined by his girl. Howard ventured forward and crushed the seals and entryways. in a steady progression. Indeed, even it was close to the entombment office of ruler Tutankhamun. The story of the revile started with the brilliant canary that Carter conveyed with him when he came to Luxor. At the point when the burial ground was found, it was first called the graveyard of the brilliant sparrow. It was referenced in his book The Burglary of the Ruler by the essayist Mohsin Muhammad. That when Howard traveled to Cairo to be gotten by the master, his collaborator Calendar put the bird on the overhang to get the air breezes. Upon the arrival of the kickoff of the burial ground, Calendar heard a weak trouble as a sighing cry, so he rushed to find a cobra snake stretching out its tongue to the bird inside the enclosure. Calendar killed the snake, yet the sparrow was dead. Immediately it was said that the revile started with the kickoff of the burial chamber, as the cobra snake is situated on the crown, which is set over the top of the sculptures of the rulers of Egypt. Also, this was the start of the ruler's retribution on the people who upset him in his burial place. Then again, prehistorian Henri Breasted felt that something horrendous planned to occur on the way. But what occurred after that was something unusual that transformed over the long haul into a heavenly peculiarity, and one of the puzzling things that caused a ton of discussion and for which science has not tracked down a clarification right up till now. At the authority opening function of the burial ground, Muhammad Zakaria was harmed with a secretive fever for which the specialists could generally not track down a clarification. Also, directly around midnight, Muhammad Zakaria passed on in Cairo. The most odd thing is that the power supply was removed in Cairo for reasons unknown at a similar snapshot of death, and the world's papers featured the fresh insight about the demise of Muhammad Zakaria. Cairo papers connected the passing of Muhammad Zakaria to the lights out and guaranteed that this was finished by request of Lord Tut, and a few papers said that Muhammad Zakaria's finger was harmed by a harmed machine or pike inside the burial chamber, and that the toxin is solid, proof that it held its impact for 3,000 years. She said that some sort of microorganisms developed inside the graveyard that conveys disease and demise, and in Paris the space expert Lancelin said, Tutankhamun has gotten payback. Passing by consuming, electric shock or suffocation, the revile of the Pharaohs seeks after unlawful miners of relics in Aswan. Have you known about the Scourge of the Pharaohs, about which numerous accounts and legends are told and flowed and spread among individuals of Upper Egypt, particularly among the Egyptians as a general rule, yet some accept that it is only a fantasy, and assuming that it influences a few archaeological miners, it is only an occurrence. In the Edfu Center in Aswan Governorate, various mishaps happened, which brought about the passing of unlawful miners of ancient pieces, looking for fast riches and the fantasy about claiming enormous cash, living in royal residences and purchasing cars. One individuals in the city of Edfu caught wind of those accounts that the proprietor unexpectedly got rich and had cash to eliminate every one of his concerns and carry on with the remainder of his life in bliss and success, since he prevailed with regards to separating one relic searched for her under his home. This man named M.P., 30 years of age, the proprietor's way of behaving, which he found out about, and he began digging under his home close to the Edfu sanctuary, and utilized an electric drill to crush rocks, yet this machine came on one of the principal electrical cables associating the houses, and the electric momentum stunned him to fall dead right away, and the news coursed among his neighbors and individuals of his town that the Scourge of the Pharaohs had occurred for him. Passing by pyrocrime. Archaeological uncovering occurrences go on in a similar region, and in another episode, the proprietor is digging under his home, after his devil drove him to the way that there are the fortunes of the pharaohs covered under his home close to the Edfu sanctuary, and in light of the fact that he caught wind of the strategy for boring and breaking rocks utilizing the fire, he conveyed the gas pipe home into the opening he began diving in days prior, and with individuals say, as they said. In the first, he was struck by the Scourge of the Pharaohs, passing by strangulation. Individuals have not taught from the passing mishaps that occurred for the people who attempt to contact tribal relics and old Egyptian collectibles to offer them to dealers inside and outside Egypt, and last Friday, 4 from one family got up and chosen to dig under their granddad's home after they fantasized getting rich quick and residing in flourishing. They are the sibling of the proprietor of the house, his child, nephew, and a fourth from a similar family. The 4 began digging under the house in the town of Al-Muhammad in the Edfu Focus, until they arrived at a 16-meter profound opening consummation in a side storm cellar, and since diving in the ground in some cases faces hard shakes, these 4 depended on utilizing a gas chamber, and brought down it into the opening and started to bore, during which the Scourge of the Pharaohs came, as some repeated a short time later, and the chamber hose severed and they would choke subsequent to breathing. In the line gas, 3 of them passed on while the 4th was taken to the clinic. Passing under the sand. The tales didn't end at this house in the Edfu Focus, however, this time with the outcome of Hajj Zidane in the town of Al-Sarraj, when one of the occupants likewise dug under his home looking for the fortune of the pharaohs, and inside the opening this individual utilized a gas line to utilize the fire to separate strong rocks subsequent to warming them and presenting them to cooling out of nowhere with water. And here the shock happened while proceeding to separate the stones. One of these stones imploded, after which the whole opening fell over his head and covered the residue from beneath, and individuals continued to recite, "Revile of the Pharaohs." Investigation craziness. The fixation on archaeological uncovering is one of the wild illnesses that influences an enormous number of individuals in the Edfu Focus, since some accept that the Edfu sanctuary isn't the size it is currently, yet, as old history specialists notice, on an area commonly bigger than it is now. He said, "The elderly folks of ancient pieces. The regions encompassing the Edfu sanctuary are progressively current realities of looking and exhuming ancient pieces under the houses. Through the assistance of one of the Sheikh experts in extricating pharaonic artifacts from the beginning, finding out where the fortunes are covered and following the entryways of the archaeological tombs. These seniors wear garments like what comes in the show and the garments of performers and spiritualists, and use incense and complex charms to manage the jinn and gatekeepers of burial places and archaeological sanctuaries that poor person yet been found. These sheiks, as they are called, get truckload of cash from the proprietor of the house where he exhumes for relics, up to 10 and 20,000 pounds, notwithstanding his biggest offer on account of arriving at the fortune and opening the burial ground. Making sense of that diving looking for artifacts goes on for quite a while, frequently as long as 2 years. During which the proprietor of the house keeps on looking for treasure that he pulls out of destitution, and moves it to the rich as indicated by their fantasies. Individuals in the Edfu Center trust a great deal in the issue of the Scourge of the Pharaohs. In any case, they proceed with their work in the uncovering of curios, and to keep away from conflict between unfamiliar accomplices and for dread that somebody will entice and guide the security administrations to do as such, a considerable lot of the people who pursue this direction are quick to utilize their family members and family members from a similar family to dig and unearth, bringing up that the older folks of relics are generally from outside Aswan Governorate, and the purchasers likewise from outside the Governorate. Costs for antiquities among runners. A portion of these curios found are worth millions to relics vendors, and the cost of the piece increments to the extent that the pieces show excellence, varieties, and engravings, and concerning the burial place, casket, and mummy, they are the most costly in the artifacts exhuming market, bringing up that the poor are the people who take this bearing, however the rich are the most, because of their capacity to trade and bridle every one of the fixings that assist him with digging and uncover. As far as it matters for him, Muhammad al-Idrisi, boss controller of the relics region of the Cape, and responsible for seizures and archaeological issues in Edfu, affirmed that the craziness of archaeological removal is as yet creating a shaded area in the Edfu focus, and is expanding a result of the demise occurrences, which some might feel that it is the scourge of the Pharaohs. Some even utilize a few frauds and cheaters who mimic this calling to get compensated or get a rate on the off chance that they use incense and charms that misdirect the proprietor of the place of the honesty of the expressions of this sham, and ultimately lead him to death. Ancient Pieces Regulations. The main examiner of the Al-Kab relics region brought up that ancient pieces overseers, if an individual is found exhuming ancient pieces under his home, they can't utilize this removal to arrive at a potential archaeological disclosure, on the grounds that the regulations specify sitting tight for the last judgment of the proprietor of the house so archaeologists can keep digging. Focusing on the need to change Regulation No. 117 of 1983, concerning relics, because of the limitations forced by this regulation on artifacts auditors in case of the capture of one of the miners.